My name is David Chipperfield. I've spent a lot of my life building in other people's cultures. And I think that puts a heightened sense of responsibility culturally and societally on the architects. Architects have a sort of strange relationship to their buildings because at the end you leave them, but they consume you for 5 or 6 years. They mean a lot to you, and then of course you have to, like your children, you have to step away from them. The most underestimated aspect of architecture is process. The reality is that good buildings come from good process, and good process means that you're engaging and collaborating with different forces. But if you're fortunate, as we have, to have lots of clients where the dialogue, the process is a fundamental part of making architecture, then I think you can't underestimate that architecture is not just a product, it's a societally engaged product. And that's what makes architecture more important. And I think as architects, our general perspective, in the sense that we can see the connection between different aspects of the environment. Good architecture provides a setting, it's there and it's not there. Like all things that have great meaning, they are both foreground and background. Experiences in life that I gravitate and enjoy most are when normal things have been made special, as opposed to where everything is about the special. And I think we need to step into that territory much more, in the sense of being more proactive in insisting in the quality environment, because I think it's profoundly important to our quality of life. Modern architecture wants to ally itself with progress and advance. And in some ways that's a contradiction to architecture, because architecture, the issues are timeless. Cities are records of our history. They're cumulative, sedimentary, organic, and they are themselves a record. Historically, and obviously now, the city is a dynamic, changing thing. But in contemporary times, we find ourselves a lot of times, in terms of scale, removing large parts of the city, and in some ways, removing some of those layers. Clearly, we've all understood that keeping historically significant buildings, this is something that we must do, and that's quite well established. I think the question is, what role do the other more anonymous buildings of the city play in recording and creating the cumulative character of the city, which creates its particular qualities? You can't fossilize cities, they have to change. I think going forward, we've got to become much more clever about getting that balance together, for two reasons. One is for maintaining the significance and meaning of the city itself, and the second is in terms of resources and the use of resources. The knocking down of old buildings of all sorts of qualities is going to become more and more questionable. So I think we're going to have to up our game on this dialogue. Cities should be about looking for continuity, looking for things which are, passing ideas on from one time to another. The profession of architecture struggles with this condition, which is one where an architectural practice tends to be identified with a person or with a couple of people, normally the people who started this venture, but ultimately it's totally dependent on a big team of people. My concern is to create the umbrella under which the people are protected and given the opportunity to produce architecture at a high standard. Most architectural planning processes are so complex that one person couldn't hold the questions in their head anyway. So it's my responsibility in a way to keep the office pointed in the right way. But there's no way one can do any of this without the quality of people that surround you. And then the question, I think, for us and my partners is how do we set this up for a future generation? I mean, how do we keep this going beyond us? And how do we embed this with criteria, qualities, and ambitions that don't depend on us as the maintainers of that, but that might some sort of longevity for the talented younger generation that we have in our office. Fundamentally, architecture is a profoundly collaborative process, more than any other. And I think if we really want to re-engage and we want to deal with bigger societal issues, social inequality and environmental sustainability, then we have to be part of a bigger conversation as well. And in order to have a conversation, you need other partners beyond the technical and professional ones. My generation has to caution and direct the next generation not to imitate us, but to learn from us and to, in a way, find new directions. And I don't think architecture in the future is going to be so concerned with its image and identity. It's going to be more important about process. How do we make architecture? It's going to be more concerned with the relevance. Why do we do it? And it's going to be more concerned with the purpose. For what do we do it? Architecture's always concerned itself with the idea of permanence. Cathedrals, churches, any sort of monuments aspire to an idea of permanence. Our practice has become maybe more involved in restoration projects than I maybe imagined that would 30 years ago. I have to say, I think we've all found a certain richness in the process of restoring old buildings or working with pre-existing architectural monuments or even just normal buildings. Now we're in a very interesting moment where concepts of permanence are changing. First of all, the tendency to knock things down as soon as we think that they're out of date, redundant anyway, or unfashionable, is going to be checked. We're having to think in very different ways now and not just think that a building is a sort of monument, and it's a monument both to the society that builds it and to the architect that's designed it, and that it's going to last forever. I think we will have to be much more considerate about reusing buildings and extending their lives instead of throwing them away and replacing, for reasons of sustainability and resource. The interesting thing about restoration is that it requires a sort of philosophical position to start with. The second thing about restoration, which I think we've enjoyed and we've discovered, is that it's a much more collaborative process than building a new building. You engage as many people as you can into that process. But to some degree, you're having to convince people of the qualities of what they have to imagine. I'm, in a way, the guardian of meaning, memory, and heritage. There's a meaningfulness here, and it puts all histories into focus. Architecture is something which can intensify and support and help our rituals and our lives. We need buildings, we need spaces, we need the streets to be organized. The question is, can we do that with care and consideration, like everything? I think good architecture isn't something that tells you it's good architecture. It's not a performance. But after you feel comfortable somewhere, you start to realize the reason you feel comfortable is because it's been quite well thought about. It's actually quite nice. When I did the Venice Biennale a number of years ago, the thing I was trying to say is, guys, instead of us all promoting ourselves individually, why don't we promote ourselves collectively? What do we offer society? What's our relationship to society? What's our common ground? And that's what we should be dealing with. I think that our concerns about diversity, about environment, about social inequality, these general concerns are profoundly important to our future and to the future generations. And we have to find ways of genuinely addressing these things. Essentially, what we have to hope now is that the environmental crisis makes us reconsider priorities of society, that profit is not the only thing that should be motivating our decisions. Architects can't operate outside of society. So we need society to come with us.